Can you believe that a mosquito electric racket like this can actually be turned into a homemade welding machine? It might sound a bit hard to believe, but in this video I'll show you step by step how I managed to do it. Let's take a look. I started thinking that maybe this electric mosquito racket could be reused as the handle for a homemade welding machine. Just imagine that for a moment. It's quite a unique idea, isn't it? With this set of bolts, nuts, and 2 metal washers, it becomes very convenient to connect the mosquito racket body to the homemade welding tip. Next, I have a piece of single electrical wire with many braided copper strands inside. This type is quite common because it's flexible and easy to bend. I'll use it to connect the homemade welding device to the power source. To keep the wire from getting in the way while working, I'll secure part of it along the handle of the racket using a plastic zip tie. After connecting one end of the wire to the front part of the welding device, I'll attach an alligator clip to the other end of the wire. This is the alligator clip I mentioned earlier. This type of clip is very common in electrical work because it allows you to connect a wire quickly and securely without complicated steps. You simply clamp it onto the contact point and it holds firmly, which makes it very convenient for temporary connections in simple devices or circuits like this. Next, to connect the bolt to the homemade welding tip, I will remove one metal connector from inside this 2x8 electrical terminal block and use it as an intermediate piece to link the two parts together. Inside a typical AA battery, there is a carbon rod located right in the center. This carbon rod actually serves as an electrode in the battery structure, which means it can conduct electricity and tolerate heat quite well. When removed, you'll notice that the rod is straight, fairly rigid, and quite durable, making it suitable for reuse in small DIY projects. In practical use, this carbon rod can withstand relatively high temperatures without melting like softer metals, and it also does not rust during use. Because of these properties, many people reuse it as an electrode, an electrical contact point, or as a component that needs to carry current in simple homemade devices. For a basic welding device, the tip needs to conduct electricity efficiently and handle high temperatures while working. The carbon rod from an AA battery fits these requirements quite well. That's why repurposing this carbon rod as a homemade welding tip is both a reasonable and practical choice for DIY projects. I will also make another tool to connect to the negative terminal of the power source. Its structure is quite simple, just a piece of electrical wire with two alligator clips attached to both ends, making it quick and convenient to clamp onto the power source and the contact point during use. The power source I'm using here is a small battery. This type of battery can provide a fairly stable amount of power, which is just enough for the device to operate, and it's also quite convenient for small experiments or DIY projects like this. And to accurately evaluate the effectiveness of this homemade welding device, I will carry out a few small tests. Through these tests, you can observe and judge how well the device actually works, so make sure to watch closely. From this test, we can see that the device is able to weld thin metal pieces together without damaging them. The result shows that it works quite effectively for simple situations like this. So that wraps up our experiment with this homemade welding device made from an electric mosquito racket. It's a simple idea, but it shows that with a bit of creativity, everyday items can sometimes be reused in completely new ways. If you found this experiment interesting, be sure to stay tuned for the next videos.